new Chinese generative AI model is sending shockwaves through the stock market and the tech world.
The model is called DeepSeek R1, and if the claims its developers are making turn out to be true, the implications for American tech are serious.
Firstly, it's a practically universal truth in the tech world that in order to power advanced AI models like ChatGPT, you need massive amounts of computing power. This requires data centers and also expensive microchips.
In fact, President Donald Trump last week announced an up to $500 billion AI initiative that would invest in building data centers.
Tech companies like Google, Meta, and Microsoft have already dished out tens of billions on AI infrastructure.
The problem, however, is that DeepSeek is claiming that it cost them only $5.6 million worth of Nvidia chips to develop their model.
Now, to be sure, critics are calling this a gross underestimation, but that did not stop the stock market from panicking.
Nvidia, for example, lost $589 billion in market capitalization as the company's shares dropped 17%.
Oracle was the other big loser, with the stock tanking 14% and the company's chairman, Larry Ellison, losing $27.6 billion of his net worth.
Here's President Trump last night on the situation.
The release of DeepSeek AI from a Chinese company should be a wake-up call for our industries that we need to be laser focused on competing to win, because we have the greatest scientists in the world. Even Chinese leadership told me that. They said, you have the most brilliant scientists in the world. And this is very unusual when you hear a DeepSeek, when you hear somebody come up with something. We always have the ideas. We're always first. So I would say that's a positive. That could be very much a positive development. So instead of spending billions and billions, you'll spend less and you'll come up with, hopefully, the same solution.
Not all is bright for DeepSeek, however. The company said yesterday it was hit with a cyber attack and will temporarily limit registrations.
X has been filled with reactions.
Trump's AI and crypto czar, David Sachs, wrote, DeepSeek R1 shows that the AI race will be very competitive and that President Trump was right to rescind the Biden executive order, which hamstrung American AI companies without asking whether China would do the same. Obviously not. I'm confident in the U.S., but we can't be complacent.
Venture capitalist Mark Andreessen wrote, DeepSeek R1 is AI's Sputnik moment.
Conservative commentator Ben Shapiro chimed in, warning, the DeepSeek surprise is a fantastic reminder that our enemies are motivated and aggressive, and that our technological superiority is not guaranteed. So this did take a lot of people by surprise yesterday, took the markets by surprise, having a negative effect on Nvidia and others that produce these microchips. There's a lot I can say on this subject. First of all, I agree that the spirit of competition is good. Now, unfortunately, we're in a competition with China, which is a global adversary. But technology, this drive to create better, faster, more successful technology is good and will spur on our companies to innovate. It does show the limits of investment, particularly government investment in things like, we're making massive investment. The CHIPS Act, right, was all about, CHIPS Act, was all about getting these microchip processing plants, hopefully building them in this country, which I had a lot of skepticism if we were ever going to be able to relax enough labor and environmental laws to make building the thing here cost effective. That's another subject. But this show, you could drop, a gazillion dollars on public dollars to do this, and then they invent something across the ocean that requires a fraction of the computing power you thought you needed, which is why I tend to want to leave it to the market. Let people invest their own money in this kind of thing. Then if that gambit doesn't work out or a new technology outcompetes, well then you suffer, you who invested in it, but not we, the American people, who were forcibly invested in this vis-a-vis government funding.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, that, because I guess the counter-argument there would be the US government has an obvious interest, as does the US population, in keeping the United States ahead of China in this AI arms race.
Absolutely on board with that, yes.
And so if that is the case, then that would be the argument for government assistance to the chips being manufactured here, or some kind of assistance for people who are American companies at the forefront of AI. Now, it does get complicated here because, for example, there was the whole export issue where at one time, the Chinese were able to buy these high-performance chips, and then the Biden administration were like, no, you can't do that anymore, it's too risky. And now they can buy the low-performing chips, which they seem to have been able to engineer in some fashion, and I promise I'm not an expert on AI engineering, but they have been able to apparently use the lower-performing chips to get the same result for a fraction of the cost, which seems pretty bad news for America in several ways.
I saw people on social media experimenting with DeepSeek, where you did get the usual, like, tell me about Tiananmen Square.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, I've never heard of that. How interesting.
Right, and the Uyghurs as well, I believe. It wasn't all that enthusiastic about answering.
Yes, which is why, going to the national security implications, why I do very firm, and I think we mostly agree on this, it is important for the U.S. to be globally competitive. I don't want to hand the future of our planet, the next century, to Chinese dominance, to a country that, whatever the flaws of the U.S. are, the U.S. government, the Chinese government engages in very direct censorship in a way we do not. It engages in very direct oppression of a minority population in a way we do not. That's not to say we're perfect, or certainly you can level criticism against us. You're legally allowed to level criticism against us in a way you're not in China. And so we cannot lose to them because that would be bad for the world. Now, we don't want to fight them militarily. I don't want to have World War III. It should be like the Soviet Union, where we actually don't battle them in any kind of military confrontation. Now, we did do indirect military confrontations with the Soviet Union that even those I don't think were particularly good ideas. But we win by having a better, more powerful, more innovative economy that eventually caused theirs to collapse in shame. And that is what I want to do as well, and that takes winning the AI race and all these other technological races.
Which is what Andreessen was getting at with that Sputnik quote. As soon as I read that, I thought, I wonder, does the younger members of our audience understand what that is a reference to? So that is the space race that took place between the United States and the Soviet Union, in which the United States, I guess, ultimately prevailed, and obviously prevailed in the Cold War.
Right, they got the first thing up in space,
yes.
But then we got the man on the moon.
Exactly. So they beat us with Yuri Gagarin, and then we beat them with Neil Armstrong and those guys. Unless you think the moon landing was fake, of course.
Yeah, that's what our production team is telling us. But what if the moon landing was fake? Nah.
Exactly. But look, I mean, there's obviously a serious American interest in staying in front in this particular race. It is kind of alarming that nobody really expected this to happen, at least up until a couple of weeks ago. There was some obscure paper somewhere, and then suddenly this thing emerges sufficient to tank Nvidia by like $500 billion. That's pretty disconcerting.
Yes, I do think this technology is going to be very, very important. I saw some Luddite type people saying, what is this even good for? Like, even the ability to save time to write, to have an AI produce kind of formulaic writing that people have to do for their jobs could save tons of time, effort, and money. That in the future, with so many things to distract us. I mean, I feel this every day. You probably do too. So many different messaging, communications platforms, so much competition for our time and attention. But there's only going to be 24 hours in the day. We don't have a technology to lengthen the day or slow down human experience. Things that save us time are going to be the most important innovations. So even just saving a little bit of time, that adds up. So that's why AI, I think, has really tremendous potential.
Sure, no, absolutely. Great innovation.
Coming up next on Rising, is Jim Acosta's time at CNN coming to a close? It just might be. Stay tuned.